Imagine a distant land, untouched by iron and untainted by cities. A land where the wind whispers between the trees and the rivers breathe like living beings. In this place lived a unique people who carried the secrets of nature in their hearts. Strangers called them Red Indians, but they did not refer to themselves by this name. They saw themselves as children of the sun, brothers of the birds, and guardians of the land that embraced them. Their story is not about grand palaces or mighty armies, but about the rhythm of drums, moonlit dances, and wisdom whispered from generation to generation. So, join us as we open a forgotten page of history, a page that tells of a time when humans lived in perfect harmony with the universe. In the depths of the American continent, where vast plains stretched endlessly and mountains stood like silent sentinels, a people lived in complete harmony with nature. They viewed the earth as a child views its mother, not as something to own, but as a spirit that protected and nourished them. A single step on the soil was, for them, a pledge to preserve it. They saw rivers as lifelines. They did not merely drink from them, but performed brief rituals before touching their waters, lifting their hands to the sky in gratitude. When they cut down a tree, they did so carefully and only after a short prayer, asking the spirit of the tree for permission to take what they needed. This spiritual connection led them to treat nature not merely as a source of wealth, but as a living entity deserving of respect. Across the plains, massive herds of buffalo roamed. The sight of them running through thick clouds of dust was awe-inspiring, a reminder of the power of the world they inhabited. The buffalo was more than just food. It was a symbol of giving. Its meat provided nourishment. Its hide was used for shelters and clothing. Its bones were shaped into daily tools, and even its horns were turned into vessels. Nothing was wasted. The sky for them was an open book. They tracked the movement of the stars to measure time and seasons. When the moon shone full, they saw it as a sign of sacred nights filled with singing and dancing. Rain was not just water falling from the heavens, but a gift from higher spirits, welcomed with joy and seen as a message of hope for life's continuity. For them, life and earth were inseparable. Their homes were tents made of animal hides, erected in open spaces, and easy to move when they traveled. They didn't leave behind massive stone structures, but traces that blended seamlessly with nature, as if they wished to pass through this world lightly, without wounding the earth. They understood that humanity is a guest, and that the earth remains long after us. Because of this, they did not seek ownership or domination, but balance with the world around them. This simple philosophy shaped their identity and gave them the strength to endure for centuries. Thus, as their story begins, we see that their relationship with the earth was not just a means of survival, but a guiding spirit for their entire way of life. And so, with this connection to the earth, their story begins. Let us now move into the details of their daily lives. The day of the Native Americans began with a calm rhythm, yet it was full of movement. Every member of the tribe knew their role. Women would head to the small fields early in the morning to cultivate corn, beans, and squash. These crops were called the Three Sisters because they grew together and complemented one another. Corn grew tall to provide support, beans climbed its stalks, and squash spread its broad leaves to protect the soil from the sun's drying heat. While the women planted and harvested, the men stood at the edges of the forest tracking animal trails. Hunting was not a sport for pleasure, but a serious task for the tribe's survival. They moved with agility, blending into the trees, waiting for hours for the right moment to release their arrows. Buffalo and deer were their main prey, but they also knew how to make use of rabbits, birds, and fish, leaving no opportunity for sustenance to slip away. Children, too, were not far from work. They helped their mothers gather herbs or fetch water from the river. At the same time, they learned skills through play, crafting small wooden bows, competing to see who could shoot arrows the farthest, or building tiny clay houses mimicking the adults' homes. In the evenings, they would gather around the fire to listen to stories passed down by the elders. Life within the tribe was not just about farming and hunting, it was also about daily cooperation in every detail. If someone set up a new tent made of animal hides, everyone helped direct it. If a hunter returned with a plentiful catch, the meat was shared with all, ensuring no one went to bed hungry. This spirit of sharing allowed them to live as one body, where joy was collective and sorrow was shared equally. Even leisure had its own flavor. In the summer, they gathered by the river to swim or sat under the trees to enjoy the simple melodies of flutes made from bone and the rhythmic beat of drums, syncing their hearts with the sounds of nature. On cold nights, a fire burned in the center of the village, and the entire tribe would circle around it to share stories of their ancestors and sing songs that tied the past to the present. Their days were a blend of work and play, toil and joy, hunting and farming, a life that seemed simple but was filled with meaning, a life not centered on the individual but on the tribe as a whole. Now, with this close look at their daily lives, let us move on to another chapter that reveals their physical appearance and their unique identity. When you observe Native American tribes from afar, the first thing that catches your eye is their clothing and adornments. Clothing was not just a way to cover the body, but a canvas that told the story of the person and their status within the tribe. Women crafted garments from animal hides, cleaning and decorating them with colorful threads or tiny shining beads. Their skilled hands transformed simple materials into works of art, rich with colors and symbols. Some long garments were adorned with geometric shapes or designs inspired by the sun and birds. Each color carried meaning. Red symbolized life, yellow represented the sun, and blue was a sign of... The men, on the other hand, wore short jackets or leather pants, often tying decorative belts around their waists. But what truly distinguished them was the adornments they wore on their heads. Feathers held a great significance, and each feather carried a meaning. An eagle feather symbolized courage, a falcon feather signified wisdom, and a colorful feather was sometimes granted after a heroic achievement. The more feathers a warrior had, the greater the respect the tribe held for him. Adornment was not limited to clothing, it extended to the body as well. Some men painted their faces with striking colors before going hunting or into battle. Red on the cheeks symbolized strength, while black lines around the eyes represented focus and alertness. Women sometimes drew fine lines on their arms or placed circles on their foreheads. These markings were believed to protect the spirit and connect it to the hidden forces of nature. Jewelry was also an essential part of daily life. Women wore long necklaces made of shells and bracelets crafted from bone or copper. Even children were given small pendants at birth as talismans for protection. These items were not merely decorative, but silent messages of love and belonging, often passed down from generation to generation as family heirlooms. During grand occasions, such as harvest celebrations or weddings, everyone wore their finest attire. Women let their hair flow freely, adorning it with colorful feathers or fabric ribbons. Men painted their faces with bright colors and wore headdresses decorated with long feathers swaying in the air as they danced. The entire scene resembled a living painting, full of colors, drum beats, and songs, with the whole tribe transforming into a single harmonious work of art. Even the sounds of their adornments played a role. As they moved, their metal bracelets emitted gentle sounds that blended with the rhythm of the drums, making their dances even more rhythmic. In this sense, clothing became a part of the music, and adornments became part of the story. For the Native Americans, clothing was not a luxury, but a language. Every piece carried meaning, every color told a story, and every feather or bead held a secret of their heritage. Through this silent language, they expressed their identity and maintained their status within their tribes. While their adornments revealed their external appearance, what truly united them was their inner beliefs. Thus, we now leave their outward appearance behind and delve into the depths of their customs and rituals, where the spirit reveals more than the eye can see. In the lives of Native Americans, rituals were not mere external displays, but lifelines that connected them to the universe. Every movement, every song, every dance was part of a deep belief that the spirit resided in everything. There was no separation between the material and the spiritual worlds. Instead, they were intertwined into a single fabric where humans lived side by side with trees, water, and wind. The sun was a sacred being to them, seen as the great mother who illuminated the day and provided warmth. In the morning, they raised their arms to the sky in greeting as the sun rose. The moon, too, held a special place in their hearts. Its fullness was considered a sign of blessed nights, during which dances and hymns were performed. At the changing of the seasons, the tribe held grand celebrations. In early spring, they danced around the fire, praying for a season filled with blessings. In autumn, after harvesting corn, squash, and beans, the tribe gathered in a wide clearing to give thanks. They lit fires, and the drums beat in a rhythm resembling the heartbeat as everyone began to dance in circles, men and women, young and old, all moving together as if the entire tribe became one body, swaying to the sound of the drums. There was also a ritual known as the ghost dance. Participants wore white garments and moved in slow motions, mimicking the movements of spirits. The purpose of this ritual was not fear, but hope. The hope that the ancestors would return to aid the living. The buffalo dance, on the other hand, was a gesture of gratitude to the animal that provided them with meat and hides. The dancers wore horns on their heads and imitated the buffalo's movements in the prairies as a mark of respect for the creature that sustained their survival. Drums were a central instrument in every ritual. Their deep sound resonated in the heart, making the listener feel part of a larger world. Flutes made from bone played sorrowful melodies, like the echo of wind through the trees. Singing was performed collectively, with simple words that carried profound meanings about the earth, the sky, life, and death. Even fire held a special place. When it blazed in the center of the gathering, it was not merely a source of warmth, but a connection between the human world and the spirit world. They threw fragrant herbs into the flames, sending smoke up to the sky as a message of gratitude. Among their most notable rituals were those accompanying birth or the transition from childhood to manhood. A young boy was sometimes sent into the forest for several days without food, to test his solitude. When he returned to the tribe, he was greeted with dancing and singing as a sign that he had become a full-fledged member of the community. These rituals gave the tribe a spiritual unity and made individuals feel that they were not alone, but part of a broad circle that encompassed nature, ancestors, and unseen spirits. Although customs and rituals formed the heart of their spiritual lives, their lives were not without conflicts and disputes. Here, another aspect of their civilization emerges: the justice system they crafted in their unique way. Justice among Native Americans was not written in laws on paper or preserved in high-walled courts, but was embedded in the tribe's collective consciousness and the wisdom passed down by elders from generation to generation. They saw people as branches of a single tree, and if one branch broke, the others were responsible for helping it heal, not leaving it to wither. When a conflict arose between two individuals, it was not left to anger or revenge. Instead, a small council of elders would convene. These elders were not rulers in the traditional sense, but wise individuals with experience who understood people and the secrets of life. They would sit in an open area to show that the judgment was public and transparent for all to hear. The elders listened to each side, allowing them to speak without interruption until each person had finished presenting their case. Justice was not about harsh punishment, but restoring balance. If someone stole food, for example, they were not imprisoned, but asked to work with the affected family or provide them with what they could from hunting or farming. The goal was always to reintegrate the wrongdoer into the community, not to exclude them. In cases of severe harm, the solution sometimes involved offering a significant gift to the injured party or their family, or committing to public service that benefited everyone. Children also learned from these situations. They sat with their parents in listening circles, observing how disputes were resolved through participation, not exclusion. In some tribes, there was a man known as the stick carrier. This person was not a soldier, but a mediator who reminded people of the tribe's laws when conflicts began to escalate. His mere presence among people was enough to calm tensions because he symbolized moral discipline, not punishment. What stands out is that justice among them was not used to intimidate people, but to protect the community. They believed that if punishment aimed for revenge, it only increased evil, but if it aimed for reform, it restored harmony. With this simple understanding, they lived for centuries, maintaining internal cohesion even in the hardest times. While justice organized their lives, it was not separate from familial bonds. The family, for them, was not just a small unit, but the foundation of the entire tribe. Now, we transition to another chapter that reveals how marriage and family were central pillars of their lives. Marriage among Native Americans was not merely an agreement between two individuals, but a sacred covenant involving both families and the entire tribe. They saw it as a bond that united kin and connected humans to the nature around them. The celebration was not just a social ritual, but a moment that reflected how the tribe viewed itself and understood the meaning of life. When a young man decided to marry, the process began with a visit to the girl's family. He did not approach directly, but sent a small gift, such as a deerskin or a hunting tool he had crafted with his own hands. If the family accepted the gift, it meant the door was open for discussion. After that, the elders of both families would meet to confirm the terms. There were no written contracts. Instead, words were spoken before witnesses, as if they were promises bound by honor. On the wedding day, the entire tribe prepared for the occasion. The women carefully sewed the bride's dress, embroidering it with patterns of birds or stars. Sometimes, the garments were decorated with blue and red threads, symbolizing the sky and the sun. The groom, on the other hand, wore special leather clothing and placed an eagle feather in his hair as a symbol of strength and courage. The celebration began outdoors in the middle of the village square. They lit a fire, not just for warmth, but as a symbol of the light that would illuminate the couple's life together. The bride and groom stood before the fire, raising their hands to the sky as if asking the spirits to bless their union. The groom then presented the bride with a symbolic gift, which could be a horse, a bow, or a handcrafted item, to show that he was capable of providing for their household. After the marriage was announced, the music began. Drums beat in a continuous rhythm, and flutes played sorrowful yet awe-inspiring melodies. The women sang special songs reserved only for such occasions, their words simple but full of meaning. Prayers for love, hope for children, and wishes for a united family. The tribe then began to dance. The men moved in a circle around the bride and groom, lifting their feet to the beat of the drum. The women clapped and sang, and the children ran around them with innocent joy. The entire scene resembled a living painting, filled with colors, fire, and sounds, as if the whole tribe was celebrating the birth of a new life. But marriage was not the end. It was the beginning of responsibility. The groom had to prove that he could hunt and protect the household, while the bride had to demonstrate her wisdom in raising children and caring for the home. In all of this, responsibility was not individual, but collective. If someone fell ill, the entire tribe participated in caring for them. If a new baby was born, everyone celebrated the child as though it were their own. To them, a child was a gift from the heavens. When a baby was born, a small bone necklace was placed around its neck as a talisman to protect it from evil spirits. At night, the mother would lull the baby to sleep with a soft song, its words simple but conveying a sense of safety. The father, in turn, would sometimes take the child with him on hunts, teaching him from a young age that life was not easy, but full of meaning. In this way, the family was not just a small unit, but the heart of the tribe. Through it, traditions were passed down, stories continued, and the new generation learned how to live in harmony with the earth and sky. Although marriage and family formed the foundation of life, this life was not always peaceful. The Native Americans often had to protect their land and their people from danger. And here begins another story, the story of wars and defense. The Native Americans were not warlike or eager for battle, but they understood that the land they lived on needed protection, and the tribe could not survive without the courage of its sons. Their battles were not for conquest, but often for defending their rights to hunt, graze, or access the waters of a river near their village. A warrior, for them, was not a bloodthirsty individual, but a protector of the land and family. From a young age, boys were trained to use bows and arrows, to walk lightly through the forests, to track footprints in the soil, and to recognize broken branches that indicated an enemy's passage. These skills were not only for war, but also part of the art of living in nature. Before a battle, they held special rituals. The warriors would sit in a circle, chanting powerful songs that ignited courage in their hearts. Drums beat in rapid rhythms, and black and red lines were painted on their faces, not just for decoration, but to make each warrior feel connected to the tribe's spirit and the spirits of their ancestors. When the time for battle came, they moved in small groups, hiding behind trees and using the night as a magical cover. Their strength lay not in numbers, but in their intelligence. They used hand signals or bird whistles to communicate and advanced slowly until they reached their target. When they released their arrows, they came from unexpected directions, confusing their enemies. However, courage was not measured solely by the ability to kill. A warrior who could touch his enemy and return alive was highly respected, as this act showed a bravery greater than stabbing or killing. Respect for the enemy after a battle was also part of a warrior's honor. If an enemy was captured, they treated him as they would treat their own, offering him food and water. Women also played an indirect role in defense. They prepared food for the warriors and cared for the wounded upon their return. Meanwhile, children sat and listened to stories of battles, memorizing the names of the brave and learning that honor was not just about victory, but about protecting the tribe. Despite the hardships of war, they never lost their humanity. They emerged from battles tougher, but they always returned to dancing and singing as if the tribe wanted to remind itself that life was greater than war and that it continued through song, not the sword. Although arrows and spears were their weapons, what truly preserved their existence was their wisdom and legends, those passed down from generation to generation. At the heart of every Native American tribe was a hidden world, unseen by the eye, but heard in stories and lived in imagination. A world of myths that connected humans to animals, the sky to the earth, and life to death. These stories were not merely entertainment for long nights, but schools from which children learned lessons of courage, honesty, and love for nature. The wolf was one of the heroes of these tales. It was sometimes depicted as a cunning creature that taught people caution, and at other times as a loyal companion that knew the paths of the forest and guided travelers to safety. The eagle was also a prominent figure. Regarded as the messenger of the sky, it soared high to see what humans could not and returned with messages from the higher realms. Even fish and rivers had stories, reminding people that every drop of water carried a secret of life. Wisdom was not only found in stories, but also in proverbs passed down through generations. They would say, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children." A simple phrase that reflected their long-term vision and awareness that every generation is responsible for the next. Another saying they often repeated was, "He who hears the whisper of the wind knows more than he who shouts in the storm." A short sentence, but one that instilled the values of patience and listening. Within the tribe, there was a man known as the medicine man. He was not a doctor in the modern sense, but a wise figure who combined knowledge of herbs with the ability to read spirits. He knew which plant to use to cure fever and which leaf could ease pain. But more importantly, he told stories that inspired people and strengthened their resolve in difficult times. On moonlit nights, children gathered around the fire, their eyes fixed on the flames, as the elders began to recount the stories of their ancestors. They wove their words like magical threads. One should feel, while listening, as if ancient spirits are hovering above, and every star in the sky is watching what unfolds on Earth. These moments were not merely for entertainment, but for affirming identity and passing down heritage from generation to generation. Even dreams had a special place in their lives. They believed a dream was not just fleeting images, but a message from another world. If someone dreamed of an eagle soaring, it was a sign of good fortune. But if they saw a wolf in their sleep, it might be a warning of imminent danger. That's why people shared their dreams with the elders, seeking clues to help guide their decisions. In this way, wisdom and myth among the Native Americans served as an internal map, a guide through their journey in a harsh and untamed nature. They didn't need written books. The words of their ancestors were carved into memory, remaining alive with each new generation. But over time, their lives didn't stay the same. A difficult moment came, one that turned everything upside down. The moment the stranger arrived from across the sea. Thus began the bitter end. In the early 15th century, when European ships started crossing the Atlantic Ocean, the Native Americans didn't know that their world was about to change forever. They lived in harmony with the land, but the arrival of outsiders ushered in a new era, one filled with suffering. The first blow was disease. Epidemics like measles spread with terrifying speed. They had no immunity, and people began to fall by the dozens, then the hundreds, until entire villages became silent places where only weeping could be heard. Some elders said the spirits had abandoned the earth, for never had they witnessed death on such a scale. But it didn't stop at disease. The Europeans wanted land, the meadows, the forests, rich in game. Small armies armed with guns and cannons faced tribes with bows and arrows. The balance was uneven, and the tribes lost their lands. Little by little, many were forced to abandon their homes. The tribes were displaced from their ancestral territories and marched for hundreds of miles in journeys now known in history as the Trail of Tears. Men, women, and children walked under harsh conditions, freezing cold, unbearable hunger, many of them dying along the way. And yet, resistance was not absent. Some tribes fought bravely for years, like the Cherokee and the Sioux. But modern weapons were more ruthless, and the invaders outnumbered them. In the end, the survivors were forced to live in small reservations, far from the plains and rivers they had known for centuries. The loss was not just physical, it was spiritual. Many rituals were banned. Ancient dances forbidden. Schools were established to force children to speak a new language and abandon their native tongues. The goal was not just to control the land, but to erase identity itself. And yet, the sound of singing remained in the silent nights. Some elders continued to tell stories to the young, tales of the wolf and the eagle, trying to preserve what was left of their heritage. This quiet form of resistance was stronger than the sword, for it kept the roots alive in people's hearts, even as the stranger tried to uproot them. It was a bitter ending, not only because of war, but because they saw the world they had known crumble before their eyes. And yet, their spirits were not entirely extinguished. Enough remained to pass on to the generations that followed. Out of this pain, a new chapter would be born, a chapter of the legacy that never died, that remains present to this day. Despite all the loss and suffering the Native Americans endured, they did not allow their heritage to vanish. In the 20th century and into the 21st, new voices from among their children began to rise again, voices that sought to preserve what remained of their languages and rituals. Small schools began teaching words from their ancient tongues, keeping the bond between generations intact. In some villages, celebrations are still held just as they were hundreds of years ago. When the moon is full, fires are lit in open squares, drums are beaten, and people begin to dance in wide circles. The old voices blend with new ones, but the meaning remains the same, a reminder that the spirit carried by the ancestors has not died. To this day, they still create art from feathers, beads, and bone. Some of these pieces are displayed in major museums, but many are made for rituals and daily use. Each piece holds meaning, like a message from the past to the present. In our modern time, some tribal leaders participate in international conferences, speaking about the environment and living in harmony with the earth. They say that humanity is not the master of nature, but a part of it. This idea, which they lived by for thousands of years, is now a message the entire world needs to hear. Children playing in the plains today still hear stories of the wolf and the eagle, just as their ancestors once did. And when they walk among the trees, they are told that every leaf holds a spirit, and every river speaks to those who listen. In this way, the heritage lives on, not as a faded memory, but as a renewed life. The Native Americans lived through a difficult era, but they left humanity with a legacy that cannot be erased. A love of nature, a belief in spirit, and an ability to live in harmony. This legacy is not just history, it is a living lesson for the world. It reminds us that simplicity can be deeper than all displays of power. And so, when we reflect on the journey of the Native Americans, we see that their story was not merely a tale of an ancient people. It was a mirror that revealed humanity's relationship with the earth, showing that the spirit is mightier than weapons and that wisdom outlasts power. It is an eternal message that human beings are guests on this earth, and what they leave behind is not palaces or treasures, but the memory of a life lived in harmony with the universe.